Hello and welcome to my gushing, reviewing, spoilerific gushing over the 20th Discworld novel, Hogfather. So, Hogfather came out in 1996 and it's my favorite. It's my absolute favorite. It is about family, it's about folklore, it's about childhood, it's about monsters, both childhood monsters and real ones. It's about myths, it's about legend, it's about sun worship, it's about old gods doing new jobs. It's so right up my alley. So, and of course, whenever I try to start one of these vlogs, I'm like, where do I start? By picking a beginning. So the A plot, so to speak, is death. This is a book about death. Death is a main player. Like, death is playing the part of the Hogfather in this. For a reason. Obviously. And the B plot is the wizards. How you can't go wrong with that. You cannot go wrong with that. Also on reread, with the intent of making a video, I am so struck with the amount of foreshadowing of how such tiny little things, every single stitch in this fabric is just like, there's this thing about music and plumbing. There's a picture that a little girl makes, and both matter in the bigger, and there's grander scheme of things in the story. A child's painting becomes a big plot thing. So, kicking off the story, the Artists of Reality have hired the assassins to delete the Hogfather. So that's an interesting start of a story. And of course, there is someone within their ranks who absolutely fits the bill. And honestly, Mr. Tiatime, spelled tea time. What is Tiatime? He is one of the best villains I have encountered in the Discworld novels, because he is purely insane. Like, he is a pure psychopath. Just unapologetic, unremorseless, he's a psychopath. And also, side note to my regular side notes, so I read this book back in the day when I was a teenager and absolutely fell in love with it. And of course, at that age, I really loved looking up fan fiction, like Discworld fan fiction, and I tried my hand at writing some of my own, but I was never pleased with them, so they do not exist. However, I remember the popular pairings within the Discworld fanon. The only one that I'm gonna mention here that is, relevant to this, is for some reason people really loved pairing up Susan Stohellet, Beth's granddaughter, and Mr. Tiatime. I could never get behind that, because man is a psychopath, and no, spoilers, he tries to kill her twice, potentially 3 times, but yeah, that man is not about love. Anyway, bit ahead. Back to, the plot. So, Mr. Tiatime is extremely disturbing. He is described as very pretty, very boyishly pretty. He has a glass eye, which is way less disturbing than his actual eye, because the pupil of that eye is a pinpoint. He literally looks at world through a pinpoint. But he also has plans. He has a plan on how to eliminate the Hogfather. Wait, what was it? That was the Hogfather, Soul Cake, Duck, Sandman, and Death are the ones that are mentioned. And that he mentions having thought of plans for how to eliminate. He is definitely the man for the job. And fairly early on in the story, Death takes on the Hogfather's role and the things that he gets up to. Oh, we love Death and the things that he gets up to. Like, like when he's distributing the gifts. Because he's making sure that there is the belief in the Hogfather. Because belief is, of course, important, and children have kind of stopped believing in the Hogfather. And this ties into, this is strand. This is strand that ties into every other one. And so Death is going down the chimney, leaving sooty footprints, taking away the pork pie and the sherry, because of course Albert is with him, and Albert is a happy pixie. And he leaves gifts and stuffs the stockings and all that, and leaves sledge tracks on top of the roof, so there is proof that the Hogfather has been there. And when he goes into the shopping center, and all the kids cannot get over the fact that one of the sledge of the Hogfather is drawn by 4 great hogs. Actual hogs, like real unpleasant wild hogs, with the size and the coarseness and the smell, and the fact that one of them wheezes. Oh, how the kids cannot get over that. But one of the notes that I made is the fact that I made a note of some of the toys that the children ask for, such as a real Klatsiang ninja, a Captain Carrot one-man night watch. There are toys of Captain Carrot at this time, and they are apparently very, very popular. And of course, the other main character here is Susan Stohel, his Death's granddaughter, and she is absolutely... Well, first, she does not want to be drawn into this, she wants to be normal. And secondly, to begin with, she is convinced that her grandfather has gone off the bend again. Because he kind of has done that before. Kinda. But And then plot B is all about the wizards and Unseen University, and good lord. So the first scene is much dramatically having the gardener Mojo, the dwarf who basically does all the odd jobs around the university, is having him on board a mysterious door that turns out to be a bathroom designed and made by bloody stupid Johnson. Berkhold Studley. Right! Berkhold Studley Johnson. Infamous in Discworld lore. Let's just say that the fact that he made a bathroom that seems to work as a bathroom should be your first clue that something is terribly wrong with it. However, Arcangelo really, really wants a bathroom of his own, and it works, so he uses it. But this is also a bookend. The story starts with Ridkill in the bathroom, and it ends with Ridkill in the bathroom. Also pipes. And there's another thing in the Unseen University that Blood Stupid Johnson made that also has pipes. Now, the thing is, because the Hogfather is missing, that means that there is a vacuum, there's a power vacuum. There's a lot of belief sloshing around, there's old magic sloshing around, meaning that now there's a lot of what turns out to be old household gods returning in different positions, modern. Such as the Ruka gnome, who brings Rukas. There is the old god of hangovers, who becomes a player in Susan's plotline. There's the Ruka gnome, the hairless fairy, who attacks a Dean, the eater of socks, the wisdom tooth goblin, who we do not see, but we hear that he appears, the stealer of pencils, which is a very interesting looking bird. Oh yeah, and the eater of socks looks like a prehistoric elephant, a small one. It sounded very familiar. And then we have the cheerful fairy, who is like the first teacher who you get at school and keeps trying to get everyone to play games and be cheerful, and she's a soppy, weepy mess. And I love her. I love her. And then of course there's the Gling fairy, who you keep hearing but you don't see him until the end. He's the one with a bunch of little silver bells, and he rings them whenever something magical happens throughout this book. Now I mentioned the old god of hangovers. Susan finds him first at the Castle of Bones, which is the abode of the Hogfather. However, because the Hogfather is missing, the Castle of Bones is deteriorating and becoming nothing. But because the Hogfather is this big body of belief, that is where a literal god materializes, or rather an old god. An old god, because when you call upon him, you're saying, "Oh God!" Because he's the old god of hangovers. Good lord. Good lord. The entire thing with that dude. Oh, now let's see. So, as usual, I do spoil things, but I do try not to spoil too much, because I really wanted to read this story. Like, I love it. I love it. Not least because of all the mythology, the folklore that is being drawn upon and being made into this very interesting Christmas story. This seasonal story is about gods, it's about folklore, about myth, it's about the seasons, it's about sun worship, it's about old gods doing new jobs, it's about the history of Christmas as we know it here. It's about blood sacrifice, about the sun rising. It's about a lot of things, and I just love digging in and finding and learning new things. The more that I learn about folklore and history, particularly British, for some very strange reason, almost like the author had been British himself, and the allusions to other stories, like there's the Little Match Girl, that classic tragic story about the Little Match Girl. And the fact that Death doesn't like the ending, so he goes and saves the Little Match Girl. Because he can. There's also the story of the king and the poor peasant. Rectified. Because how the peasant is being treated by the king, because the king wants to feel good at Hogwarts night. And then the beggars. Because of course we cannot have a book that is set in Ankh-Morpork for the grand, the majority of the story, without having the beggars. We got Awful Ron, we got the Duckman, we got Coughing Henry, we got... Did I not write it down? No! It's Followed Ron, Arnold Sideways, the Duckman, Coughing Henry. I do feel like there's someone missing. No, apart from the dog. Does not get mentioned, but it's Gaspode. Because of course it's Gaspode. But yeah, so we get them, and we get a fancy restaurant, which spontaneously misses its entire, all the food in the restaurant goes missing when Death happens to be passing by, and he accidentally gives all the food to the beggars. And leaves nothing for... for a very mysterious reason, the restaurant only finds old boots and mud. But of course the owner of the place is an old chef himself, and he understood what restaurants are all about. So let's just say that this restaurant becomes very, very famous for its mud and boots. And there's a line... You remember there's a line in one of these books, future books, all about that. There's a throwaway. There's a throwaway reference to this restaurant, and I just... the entire thing with the restaurant, I love it. Another reason for you to read this book. So, for you to find out what happens with the restaurant. It's fantastic. I love it. Back to the assassin, who is insane. he does get some assistance. He hires gentlemen. Yeah, let's call them gentlemen. So it's Chicken Wire, Cat's Eye, Medium Dave, Banjo, and Peachy. Cannot remember why I called him Peachy. I didn't make a note of it. Medium Dave and Banjo are brothers. Banjo is... No, he really reminds me of one of the two guys in Of Mice and Men. And I cannot... It's been so long since I read a story that I cannot remember his name, but it really reminds me of one of them. He's very childlike. He is like really tall. He's a mountain of a man. Very childlike. And he doesn't really know right from wrong, which explains a lot of the things that he has done and is doing. So we also get the wizard Sidney, Sideney, Sidney, not Sydney, Sidney, who is down on his luck, which is why he takes his job. And we get the locksmith Mr. Brown, who is just the exemplar of how to like properly do a job and get away from it, how to trick the Watts. And here's the thing, here's how they are ending the Hogfather. By taking over the Tooth Fairy realm. This book is just as much about the Tooth Fairy as it is about the Hogfather. It's fantastic. And that's also kind of why the Unseen University is so tied into this. Because, you know, there's a lot of magic going on around the Unseen University. Particularly in the back, where there used to be, you know, inhabitable areas, but not anymore because of magical waste. Dialogue about that area is a lot like with nuclear waste. So the door or the entrance to the Tooth Fairy's realm is in that space, is in those streets. And so basically they kidnap a Tooth Fairy. So being a Tooth Fairy is a fairly common job for young ladies in Moprog. Terrible paying job. It's they apparently would make more money waiting on tables than being a Tooth Fairy, but you know, it's a job. So these ladies, young ladies, they pick up the teeth and leave the money. They then there's a middleman where they deliver the teeth, and there's a carter called Ernie, who is the one to bring the teeth to the Tooth Fairy. They kidnap a Tooth Fairy, hijack the cart, get Ernie to, or rather Mr. Tietime has Ernie show him how to do the whole thing. Then he kills Ernie, because of course he does. As soon as people aren't useful to him, he kills him. Just stabs him, puts him to the side. Oh, wasn't he dull? And then, and this I will admit took me far too long to understand the first time I read this book, because again, this is my second language, technically speaking my third. What they then do when they have arrived at the Tooth Fairy realm, which by the way looks like that picture that every single child draws. Well, from the outside. On the inside is a tower formed like a tooth, basically. And what they do is, after they killed the guards, they go gather all the teeth and put them in the center of the floor down below, where they had also drawn a big chalk circle with basic magic symbols, and by doing so they are now controlling every single child and probably all the adults on the Discworld. So they are using that magic to destroy the belief in the Hogfather, and if the Hogfather dies and ceases to exist, the sun will not rise. But of course you cannot be in the realm of the Tooth Fairy where children's logic rules and expect to get away from it unscathed. The invaders start behaving like children. Well, those who survive long enough. There's darkness in the tower that starts following them and starts attacking them. And what does them in are the things that they feared when they were children. Like there's a cellar. One of them disappears. Literally just disappears because he was afraid of the cellar when he was a child. Another was afraid of a wardrobe. The wardrobe eats him. Medium Dave, he was terrified of his mother when he was a child. She is now, deceased. However, the childhood terror and trauma takes form, and that's how Medium Dave disappears. And that's the thing, in the realm of the Tooth Fairy, you do not die, you disappear, because that's how children understand the world. And that's again where the Unseen University comes in, because that's where all the dead bodies pop up. The guards who are killed appear on, let's see, I think one of them was on the roof of the Unseen University. The one who got swallowed up by the wardrobe appears in the poor Bursar's wardrobe. The poor Bursar. The Bursar really suffers throughout this. And yeah, then there's one at the end. That's and there's so much more to chat about, but because the Tooth Fairy. Now there's a huge conversation about childhood monsters. So we have been seeing a lot of. Well, there's been a lot of mention of one entity, who's called Old Man Trouble, who is apparently very nasty, but you do not really call his attention or draw his attention if you can hold a tune. I really don't know what that is a reference to. I would love to know if anyone knows that. What Old Man Trouble might be an allusion to. But there's also a huge conversation about boogeymen. Goodness, very real. So the Tooth Fairy is the boogeyman, the first boogeyman. And how this creature comes to being the Tooth Fairy who basically gathers all the teeth to keep them safe so that no one can harm the children through using the teeth. Like, I do not agree with Susan. I think that's really, really sweet. I think that's really, really sweet. Oh, and the whole thing with Death and Hex. Hex the thinking machine. Oh, I love Hex in this. Hex just... I mean, Death is my absolute favorite. Hex is really, really close. Like, having them together with that one scene is just... Oh! And of course, there's Saving the Day. The auditors are still trying. They're really, really trying hard to end the Hogfather. Not with the Death family on the watch. But yeah, so of course, this is one only time that Mr. Tiatime actually appears in these stories. Because he... technically speaking, he dies twice. I think that's the only villain... fairly certain that's the only villain throughout the Discworld novels who actually managed to do that. The first time he essentially falls down the length of the tower after being kicked in the face by Susan when she's hanging from hanging by one arm, and he's holding her other arm and trying to fish out a knife to kill her. That's the kind of person he is. So she managed to kick him in the face. It's an entire thing. The entire scene before that. But yeah, she managed to kick him in the face, get him off, so he falls down onto the pile of teeth, dies, appears in the Unseen University in the Grand Hall, again traumatizing the Bursar, where the Archer and Shallow actually manages to bring him back to life by treating him like a baby goat, and it works. He then goes to where Susan... So Susan... Linear. I am not a linear storyteller. So Susan is a governess. Tiatime goes to the house where she is working, where he meets his second aunt. Again by Susan. This time with a poker, because the poker from the schoolroom The poker only kills monsters. Oh, and my last note is that Death is the only one to properly pronounce Mr. Tiatimmer's name. Everyone else says tea time. Which I don't quite understand, because they do not see it written down. He is the one who introduces himself. So he says Tiatimme. But they always say tea time. Particularly Susan when she wants to annoy him to try and kill him. But yeah. So Death is the first one to actually properly pronounce his name, because that is the kind of character that Death is. He is respectful. So yeah, that is my chaotic, non-linear gushing over the Hogfather. And of course, I'm skirting over a lot of other things. I try to pick out the things. Speaking, I try to pick out the points and things that interest me the most. The literary allusions that I managed to catch, I try to mention those, and the little bits and bobs that I just. And of course, the most important thing which is that people die. A lot. Oh, but yeah, I love this story. I just absolutely adore it. That is my conclusion. My chaotic conclusion of my Discworld reading of... Whoa! English, hello. On my rereading of the Discworld novel Hogfather. The next one is actually going to be... Jingle. So I'll hopefully see you again then, or in any other video of mine on this channel. I have a playlist of my Discworld novel rereading, fairly chaotic honestly, and yeah. So I'll hopefully see you again in some other video of mine. Until then, take care. Bless.